Welcome the Lord's chosen. Power doesn't knock. It barges in and rearranges the furniture of your life before you even realize you were living in a palace. That's the thing about being the chosen one. It's not a fairy tale, it's a collision between who you thought you were, who the world thinks you are, and who destiny refuses to let you ignore. And while people imagine chosen means floating around like some mystical celebrity, the reality is far heavier. Studies in psychology reveal that individuals who carry unusual responsibility or purpose often endure higher levels of isolation, scrutiny, and internal pressure than the average person. In other words, chosen ones don't just live life, they wrestle it, reshape it, and sometimes break under its weight before rebuilding stronger. But here's the twist. Being chosen doesn't hand you a throne, it hands you a battlefield. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks, it whispers in moments of betrayal, sleepless nights, and those awkward conversations where people can't quite explain why you make them uncomfortable. And let's be real. Half the time, even you don't know whether you're leading an army or just trying to survive Monday morning. Yet somehow the mark doesn't fade, the assignment doesn't lift, and the power refuses to become a joke, no matter how much the world tries to laugh it off. So buckle in, because this isn't about hype, this is about truth. And if you've ever suspected that your life wasn't random, that your scars weren't wasted, and that your presence disrupts rooms without effort, you're about to understand exactly why power is no laughing matter. Number one, you carry a weight others can't even name. You carry a weight others can't even name. It's not the kind of burden people can see written on your face or strapped to your back, but it is there, pressing against you in ways they will never understand. Most people live their lives chasing comfort, security, or recognition. They want ease, they want applause. But when you're chosen, none of those things define you because the demand on your life is different. You walk through doors others are too afraid to approach, and with each step, the weight grows heavier. Not because you are weak, but because you are built to carry what would crush another. That weight is responsibility. Not the kind that comes with paying bills or meeting deadlines, but the kind that follows you in every choice you make. The awareness that what you do or don't do ripples further than you can see. That your victories become a map for people you'll never meet. And your failures, if you let them linger, can echo louder than your wins. It's not a crown on your head. It's a reminder in your bones that what rests on you is not just for you. And that is why most people envy your light but wouldn't survive a day under the load that created it. This unseen weight is also expectation. People might not tell you directly, but they sense something in you and quietly lean on it. They project their hopes, their insecurities, even their disappointments onto you. They look at you as if you're supposed to know better, rise higher, carry stronger. And here's the truth. Most days you don't even know if you're getting it right. But the mark of the chosen isn't flawless execution. It's resilience under pressure. It's showing up even when your knees shake. It's carrying the invisible mantle no one else volunteered for, because deep down you knew it was never optional for you. The strangest part, that weight never fully goes away. You learn to walk with it, to let it strengthen you, to use it as proof that you were never ordinary. It sharpens your instincts, deepens your endurance, and forces you into a depth of character others can't fake. And while they can't name what's on you, they feel it. It makes them respect you, fear you, envy you, and depend on you all at once. That is the paradox of being chosen. You shine brightly, but it's the hidden weight you carry that makes you unforgettable. Number two, your existence exposes their fragility. You don't need to raise your voice or swing your fists for people to feel unsettled in your presence. Simply being who you are is enough to stir something inside them they would rather avoid. That's the truth about carrying the mark of the chosen. Your existence itself becomes a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous for people who spend their lives running from their own reflection. When they see you, they don't just see a person. They see what they could have been if they hadn't settled, if they hadn't hidden, if they hadn't abandoned their own calling. That silent reminder cuts deeper than any insult. This is why you'll notice certain people reacting to you in ways that don't make sense. They avoid eye contact. They get defensive when you've said nothing. They compete with you even when you're not playing the same game. It's not because you're against them. It's because your presence exposes the cracks in their foundation. You are a walking contrast, and without even trying, you highlight what they lack. That's not arrogance, it's reality. Light doesn't apologize for making shadows appear. And you shouldn't either. The irony is that most of these people won't even understand why they feel uneasy around you. They'll disguise it with criticism, gossip, or sudden distance, but the root is simple. You remind them of everything they buried. You represent risks they were too afraid to take, dreams they left behind, and truths they didn't want to confront. And since they can't name that feeling, they project it onto you, as if you're the problem. In their world, it's easier to resent you than to admit they've betrayed themselves. But this exposure is part of the assignment of being chosen. You weren't designed to blend in or make people comfortable. Your role is to stand as undeniable proof that different is possible. That power can be carried without apology. That courage exists in flesh and blood. The cost of that is misunderstanding, resistance, and sometimes outright hostility. But understand this. Their reaction to you is not truly about you. It's about the war inside themselves. And in that sense, you've already revealed their fragility without lifting a finger. Your presence alone does the work. That is power, raw and unspoken. Number 3, power tests you before it trusts you. Power doesn't arrive neatly wrapped with a ribbon and applause. It shows up in the form of battles that test you long before you even realize you're being prepared for something greater. When you are chosen, authority doesn't trust you immediately. It has to know if you can handle the weight without breaking, if you can stand in storms without abandoning the assignment. The test comes disguised as betrayal, as rejection, as sleepless nights where you question whether you're built for this path at all. Those trials aren't random, they are the proving ground. Power is watching to see if you'll rise when everything in you wants to stay down. That's the part most people don't understand. They think influence and leadership fall into your lap because you're gifted or favored. They don't see the private battles, the tears shed behind closed doors, the times you had to stand alone while others mocked or doubted you. They don't see the weight of responsibility pressing down before there was even a platform to carry it. Every disappointment, every loss, every attack was not designed to destroy you, but to build the resilience needed to carry authority without crumbling under it. And when you survive those tests, something changes inside you. You stop chasing validation because you know survival itself has marked you. You stop needing to prove your worth because the fire already proved it for you. This is why real power doesn't make you loud or boastful. It makes you steady. It gives you a backbone others can lean on because you've already carried what they fear might crush them. The truth is, power doesn't trust the untested. That's why not everyone who desires influence can handle it. To lead, to be chosen, to carry a mantle larger than yourself, you must first walk through seasons that strip you down to nothing but grit and conviction. And once you've passed through that, authority finally settles on you, not because it was handed freely, but because you earned its trust through endurance. By the time the world recognizes you, the crown is not new. It's been forged in silence, in scars, and in survival. That's why your power is not a joke. It was tested, and you came out unbroken. Number 4, people don't follow you, they orbit you. People don't follow you, they orbit you. There's a difference. Following suggests choice, decision, or preference, but orbiting is involuntary. It means your presence has become a center of gravity that pulls people whether they like it or not. That's the quiet truth about real power. It doesn't demand attention, it commands it. You don't need to convince, persuade, or chase. The weight of who you are creates its own magnetic field, and people respond to it instinctively. This is why you'll notice people studying you from a distance, drawn in without admitting it. Some admire you, some resent you, some want to imitate you, but all of them circle around the force you carry. It's not about charm or charisma, those can fade. Gravity is different. It's rooted in depth and consistency and the undeniable energy of someone who has survived enough storms to stand solid while everyone else trembles. That stability is what people orbit. And the strange thing is, many of them don't even understand why they're pulled toward you. They think it's your talent, your words, your presence in a room. But what they're really feeling is alignment, the invisible recognition that your life carries momentum theirs does not. For some, that's inspiring. For others, it's intimidating. Either way, neutrality becomes impossible. They can't ignore you because you've become a fixed point in their sky. Orbit, however, isn't always admiration. Some circle you in envy, some in curiosity, some in secret opposition, hoping to see you fall. But whether they revolve around you in love or in hate, they remain within your gravitational pull. That is what separates chosen power from manufactured influence. Influence has to beg for attention. Gravity doesn't. This is why you were never meant to chase validation. The force you carry ensures that what's yours will be pulled in naturally. People, opportunities, even challenges, they arrive because of the field you generate. That's the mark of the chosen, not needing to run after what was already destined to revolve around you. And whether people orbit you with praise or with resistance, the truth remains. They can't escape the pull. You've become the center, not by effort, but by essence. Number 5, isolation is not a phase, it's a forge. Isolation is not a phase, it's a forge. That's the part people never grasp when they look at your life from the outside. They assume your solitude is circumstantial, that you're just going through a quiet season, or that you've been left out by mistake. But when you are chosen, separation is strategic. It's not the universe being cruel, it's destiny crafting you in silence. The loneliness wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Being set apart strips away distractions. It forces you to sit with yourself, to hear your own thoughts without the noise of constant influence. And that process isn't comfortable. It feels like abandonment, like invisibility, like you've been disqualified while everyone else gets to enjoy connection and recognition. But hidden in that solitude is the slow, deliberate work of alchemy. Every unanswered call, every door that didn't open, every crowd that didn't invite you was sharpening you, tempering you, shaping you into something the ordinary could never withstand. In that forge, you begin to discover strength you didn't know you had. You learn to rely on clarity instead of approval, discipline instead of applause, and resilience instead of companionship. These are qualities that can't be mass-produced in community. They are born only in silence, where your inner foundation is tested without support beams to hold you up. By the time you emerge, you're no longer the same person who entered. You've been refined, like metal that went into the fire one way and came out unrecognizable, harder, sharper, and far more valuable. The irony is that isolation feels like loss, but it's actually addition. It strips you of what was fragile so that what is eternal can remain. It takes away false comfort so that real power can be seated inside you. And though the process is brutal, the result is undeniable. You walk back into the world carrying a depth others can sense but can't explain. That's why you can't look at loneliness as an accident. It was never random. It was the crucible designed to make you. The ordinary crave company to survive. The chosen are forged in solitude to lead. What felt like exile was actually initiation, and when you step out, you don't just return. You arrive as something the ordinary will never recognize but will never be able to ignore. Number 6, your silence is their confession. Silence becomes a blade when you've been marked. Power of not speaking isn't passive. It's a deliberate statement that cuts through noise and forces truth into open. When you hold your ground without explanation, people who depend on dodge, spin, or half-truths find themselves exposed. Your quiet doesn't leave gaps for them to fill with lies. Instead, it reflects their own dissonance back at them louder than any accusation you could make. People who live by performance and pretense need an audience and a script. Your refusal to validate their narrative robs them of the choreography they rely on. That's when their guilt becomes visible. Not because you named it, but because your stillness creates a mirror they can't ignore. They begin to react, speaking faster, overcompensating, or attacking without coherence, and in doing so they reveal more than they intended. Their defense turns into testimony, and their anger turns into evidence. Holding silence is not avoidance, it's precision. It takes discipline to resist filling every pause, to let their words hang and unravel on their own weight. It requires knowing the limits of your influence and trusting that truth will do the work you refuse to cheapen with theatrics. People are allergic to being seen as hypocrites or cowards, and when they face someone steady and unreactive, discomfort pushes them inward until what they hope to hide leaks out. That leak is their confession. Silence also protects you. Speaking can hand power to wrong people, give them material to twist, or validate narratives you don't want reinforced. By remaining quiet, you deny them the currency they trade in. You force them to create their own noise, and in that scramble their cracks widen. Their attempts to fill the vacuum produce patterns, repeated lies, contradictory statements, frantic justification that expose motive and weakness more cleanly than accusation could. In the end, silence is a strategic posture. It's an active form of influence that demands less noise and more responsibility from those around you. When you stand still in truth, falsehoods cannot hide behind your reactions. They unravel on their own. And what remains is a record of those who spoke to avoid guilt and those who spoke because they had nothing to hide. That is how silence becomes confession, not by your words breaking them, but by your refusal to join the chorus of denial. Number 7, you break patterns, not just expectations. You break patterns, not just expectations. That's what separates being talented from being chosen. Anyone can exceed what people thought they would do. Anyone can surprise a crowd or outpace the competition. But chosen ones aren't sent to merely outperform individuals. They're sent to disrupt entire systems, to dismantle cycles that kept generations locked in the same limitations. Your life isn't just about proving people wrong, it's about proving history can be rewritten. This is why your journey has felt heavier, more complicated, even unfair at times. You weren't just handed obstacles, you inherited patterns, cycles of fear, cycles of lack, cycles of silence, cycles of self-doubt that ran through bloodlines or communities long before you ever arrived. While others only carry their own battles, you've been tasked with breaking chains that many accepted as permanent. And whether you asked for it or not, your path became the front line. The tension of this calling is real. You're often misunderstood because people around you can't see why you refuse to settle for what's always been. They call you difficult, rebellious, or unrealistic because they don't realize you were never built to maintain what was broken. The friction isn't personal, it's generational. The resistance you face is the echo of every voice that benefited from the cycle staying intact. But here's where the truth emerges. Breaking patterns is messy, but it's also undeniable. You begin to notice small shifts. Where fear once ruled, courage starts to take root. Where silence kept people bound, your voice sparks others to speak. Where scarcity seemed normal, your resilience and persistence begin to create abundance. These changes may look subtle at first, but they're monumental, because every step you take outside the cycle makes it harder for those chains to survive. Chosen ones don't just leave a mark, they leave a rupture. They change the blueprint, so the next generation doesn't have to fight the same battles at the same starting point. That's why your presence feels disruptive, why you're rarely comfortable in old systems. You weren't made to fit, you were made to fracture. And in breaking the pattern, you do more than exceed expectations. You set a new standard, one that says the cycle stops here. Number 8, people will love your light but hate your shadow. People will love your light but hate your shadow. It's a contradiction that chosen ones live with constantly, the dual reality of being admired and resented by the same people, often at the same time. When your presence inspires, they cheer. When your gifts create opportunities, they celebrate. When your courage makes way for others to step forward, they clap the loudest. But the moment your power stops serving their comfort and starts exposing their flaws, the applause dries up. Admiration quickly mutates into resentment because the very light they once praised becomes the spotlight they can't escape. This is the trap hidden inside influence. People love what uplifts them, but rarely what challenges them. They'll bask in the glow of your victories as long as it makes them feel good about themselves. Yet light doesn't just warm, it reveals. And when your strength unmasks their excuses, when your growth exposes their stagnation, or when your truth unsettles their lies, suddenly you're no longer the hero, you're the problem. It has nothing to do with you changing. It has everything to do with their inability to face what you've uncovered. That's why you'll notice the shift is subtle at first. A cold shoulder here, an undermining comment there, little signals that the same people who once praised your brilliance are now uncomfortable in your presence. It's not because your light dimmed, it's because your shadow appeared. That shadow isn't evil. It's simply the contrast created when your authenticity collides with their pretense. It forces them to reckon with the parts of themselves they'd rather keep hidden. And most people don't want reckoning, they want comfort. Living in this tension is part of the chosen path. You cannot edit your light to make others feel safe, nor can you erase your shadow to make them like you again. Both come as a package. Your brilliance will draw people, but your truth will divide them. And though it stings when celebration turns to criticism, it's proof of your impact. They would not wrestle with you if you didn't matter. So you keep shining, knowing that both the love and the hate are reactions to the same thing, your undeniable presence. And while they may resent the shadow your power casts, deep down they know it was never your shadow that unsettled them. It was their own. Number 9. Leadership was never a choice. It was a sentence. Leadership was never a choice. It was a sentence. That's what makes the role of the chosen one so different from people who chase positions or titles. Some fight for authority because they crave recognition. Others prepare themselves for it because they want control. But when you are chosen, leadership hunts you down before you even realize what it is. You weren't given an option. You were branded with responsibility, and whether you wanted it or not, your path was bent toward it. That's why you've always felt out of step with the crowd. While others could drift through life without pressure, you carried an invisible weight, pushing you to grow faster, think deeper, and act braver. Long before you knew the word calling, you were already living it. You noticed problems others ignored. You felt accountability where others shrugged. And while they could look away, you couldn't. That wasn't a personal preference. It was the mark of destiny shaping you into someone who would lead, even against your own desire for ease. The truth is, leadership in this form doesn't begin with power. It begins with burden. You inherit sleepless nights, internal battles, and the constant pull between what you want and what you know you can't escape. You don't get to hand the assignment back when it gets heavy. You don't get to walk away without consequence. The sentence is binding because the role is bigger than you. People, places, even generations are connected to your obedience, and that reality never fully lets you rest. But here's the paradox. What feels like a sentence is also the proof of trust. Destiny only imposes responsibility on those it knows can bear it. While it robs you of the luxury of a normal path, it compensates you with the kind of impact that outlives you. You may not have chosen leadership, but leadership chose you. And in the end, that is more powerful than ambition ever could be. So you carry it, not because you wanted to, but because you were marked to. And while others will never understand why you couldn't just blend in or take the easy way, you know the truth. The sentence wasn't punishment, it was appointment. And though it demands more than you ever imagined, it ensures you'll leave behind more than you ever dreamed. Number 10. You don't belong anywhere because you belong everywhere. You don't belong anywhere because you belong everywhere. That's the paradox of the chosen path, the constant feeling of being both out of place and indispensable at the same time. You're too different to fully fit into one tribe, yet too significant to be excluded from the rooms that matter. It feels like exile on the surface, but in reality it's strategy. You were never meant to root yourself in one circle, one mindset, or one system. Your role is to disrupt, to shift atmospheres, to challenge norms, and you can't do that if you're permanently tied to one place. This is why you often carry a sense of restlessness. Communities will welcome you until your presence forces growth they weren't prepared for. At first, you're embraced because you bring value, wisdom, strength, clarity, solutions. But soon enough, that same presence starts unsettling their comfort zones. You're not a decoration, you're a disruption. And disruption doesn't get comfortable seating. It gets tolerated until the shift becomes undeniable. That's when you find yourself moving again. Not because you failed to belong, but because your assignment was never to settle. The irony is, while you don't fully belong anywhere, every table eventually makes room for you. Even when they resist, even when they question why you're there, eventually your influence becomes unavoidable. You aren't brought in as a guest to quietly observe. You arrive as the unexpected factor that forces realignment. Your voice, your perspective, your very presence rearranges dynamics, often without you trying. You were designed to enter spaces and expose what no one else had the courage to name. That kind of energy doesn't blend, it redefines. It's a lonely truth, but it's also liberating. The lack of belonging frees you from tribal chains and narrow loyalties. It gives you the rare ability to move fluidly across boundaries that others are trapped in. Where they need validation to gain entry, you carry an authority that speaks for itself. Doors open not because you chased them, but because resistance eventually yields to inevitability. So yes, you may never feel fully at home in one place, but that's because home was never supposed to be one location. It was meant to be every room you step into, even the ones that didn't want you there. You don't belong anywhere because you were designed to belong everywhere, not as a guest, not as an ornament, but as the disruption they didn't plan for and the shift they can't undo. Number 11, your name is not just identity, it's assignment. Your name is not just identity, it's assignment. Too many people reduce names to labels, a convenient way to separate one person from another. But when you are chosen, your name carries weight beyond syllables. It holds a vibration, a calling, a frequency tied to what you were sent here to do. That's why it lingers differently in conversations, why it stirs emotions in people who can't even explain why they feel something when it's mentioned. Your name isn't just what you're called, it's what you represent. For some, hearing your name brings reassurance because it reminds them of hope, strength, and possibility. For others, it triggers discomfort because it confronts the lies they've told themselves about their own limits. That's the power of assignment hidden inside identity. The sound of who you are carries both promise and disruption, and that duality is what makes it unforgettable. Even those who hate you can't stop speaking it. They gossip, they slander, they criticize, but in doing so, they spread your name further. Their attempts to bury you end up becoming the very amplification they didn't intend. This is why you've probably noticed your name being pulled into rooms you've never stepped into. It travels ahead of you, making introductions your feet haven't yet made. Sometimes it opens doors, sometimes it stirs resistance, but either way it ensures you cannot be ignored. That's the mark of a chosen name. It carries assignment that moves independently of your presence. It reminds people of your purpose whether they like it or not. And while ordinary names fade into background noise, a chosen one echoes. It has staying power because it's tied to destiny, not convenience. That's why enemies can try to silence you, but they can't erase the weight your name carries. The very mention of it awakens something in the atmosphere, a ripple of accountability that even those against you secretly respect. When destiny marked you, it marked your name too. And from that point on, your life stopped being random. Your name became more than identity, it became a signal. A reminder to some, a warning to others, a call to purpose that won't be silenced. That's why you can't underestimate who you are. The weight of your name was never in how it sounds, but in what it summons. Number 12, the attack against you was proof of your rank. The attack against you was proof of your rank. The people who spend energy trying to tear you down don't waste it on small things. They escalate when they recognize a threat they can't afford to let grow. When opposition turns sharp and persistent, it's a sign that you've moved from harmless anomaly to unavoidable force. That kind of pressure doesn't come from chance. It comes from recognition. Your enemies mark you because you matter. Their strikes measure the map of your influence the way footprints measure terrain. Opposition reveals two truths at once: the size of what you're standing for and how much it unsettles those invested in the status quo. The louder the campaign to discredit you, the larger the inheritance you carry. People don't mobilize entire arsenals of rumor, manipulation, or sabotage unless what you represent threatens something they built on convenience or fear. Their strategy is a confession. Every smear, sabotage deal, or midnight whisper is evidence that you've become a problem worth solving, and problems this costly are only worth addressing when the stakes are high. That pressure is clarifying. It strips away casual supporters and reveals who actually has skin in the game. Allies who stand by you when smoke fills the room are the ones worth keeping. The rest were spectators who applauded from safe seats. Attacks force alignment. They make people decide where they stand, and that decision tells you more than praise ever could. It also teaches you your weak points, where your enemies choose to aim. Take those strikes as data, not just wounds. They expose gaps to fix, narratives to correct, and boundaries to tighten. There's a refining effect to being targeted. The more intense the pushback, the more obvious your impact becomes. Pressure reveals whether your power is brittle or rooted. If you bend and break, you weren't ready. If you stand and respond with strategy instead of panic, you show that your rank is genuine. History remembers those who weathered coordinated storms and returned steadier, not the ones who avoided storms by staying small. So treat attack as confirmation, not merely conflict. It is a brutal scoreboard that tells you where you sit in the game. That knowledge sharpens your choices, clarifies your circle, and fuels the discipline required to hold ground. The fact that people expend so much effort against you is proof they consider you consequential. Accept that recognition, learn from the blows, and let their fear of you become the measure of how far you've come. Number 13, you don't just change rooms. Rooms collapse and rebuild around you. Walking into a space as the chosen one is never casual. It shifts the balance like an unannounced tide. Priorities move, conversations change, alliances reveal themselves. People who are comfortable keep glancing for cues. The center of gravity in the room relocates because you carry a presence that demands recalibration. It isn't about charisma or performance, it's about the pressure your existence applies to the architecture of that environment. Neutrality becomes impossible because your arrival forces decisions: who will expand, who will retreat, who will realign. That rearrangement is often immediate and sometimes brutal. Chairs remain the same, but the roles people play do not. When you enter, systems that seem stable show the seams. Processes that once hid dysfunction are exposed by your mere occupation of space. Meetings that ran on autopilot now have to account for questions nobody knew how to answer. The comfortable narratives that sustained certain power structures begin to unravel because your presence refuses those old scripts. That's why rooms reconstruct themselves around you. They can either absorb your energy and evolve, or they will reconstitute into smaller, defensive versions of themselves. Either outcome proves one truth: you were never meant to blend in. Your arrival forces organization to choose integrity or protection, and those choices change the layout of influence long after you leave. This reorganization isn't always public or dramatic. Often it's a silent shift. Someone who spoke last becomes quiet. A hidden ally steps forward. A gate previously locked opens without fanfare. The ripple effects extend beyond the walls. Contracts shift, reputations recalibrate, and future meetings carry traces of the new alignment. Those who resist will try to repaint the room the way it was, but reconstruction built around truth tends to stick. The ones who adapt gain leverage. The ones who cling to old comfort lose relevance. That is the core of your disruptive role. You don't simply move through places, you alter their future paths. Rooms collapse where they were brittle and rebuild on stronger foundations where you've insisted on truth. In time, people remember not that you were present, but that things could not remain the same after you left. Number 14, power is not glamour, it's blood. Power is not glamour, it's blood. People see the shine, the results, the influence, and assume it was handed to you like a trophy. They mistake your confidence for ease, your authority for privilege, your presence for luck. What they don't see are the nights that broke you, the sacrifices that cost you pieces of yourself, and the scars that became receipts of the path you couldn't escape. Being chosen isn't about arriving at a throne polished and untouched. It's about crawling through fire, bleeding through battles no one applauded, and paying for authority in a currency no one else was willing to spend. Rejection carved you deeper than applause ever could. You learned to stand alone, not because you wanted to, but because you had to. People you trusted turned their backs. Doors you thought were yours slammed shut. Promises dissolved. Each loss was a cut, and each cut was a test. Would you cave under the weight, or would you keep moving with wounds still open? That's the hidden exchange of power, the invisible sacrifices that don't trend, the endurance that can't be staged, the decision to keep rising when gravity was pulling harder than support. Every scar you carry has a story stitched into it. They're not decorations, they're evidence. They prove you didn't inherit this authority. You fought for it when no one believed, when even you questioned yourself. They are reminders that power isn't cheap, and it certainly isn't aesthetic. Glamour wears makeup, power wears marks. And those marks are what make you undeniable, because they tell the truth about the price you've paid. Luck doesn't build the kind of strength you carry. Comfort doesn't birth the kind of presence you exude. Pain did that. Sacrifice did that. Struggle did that. And while others may envy your position, they could never endure the process that produced it. They want the crown but not the wounds, the influence but not the isolation, the recognition but not the rejection. That's why power isn't a joke, it's blood. Every step toward it drained you, demanded you, reshaped you, and yet you didn't break. You bled and you kept moving. That is why your authority holds weight, not because it was given, but because it was purchased at full cost, and that's a bill only the chosen ever pay. Being chosen is not a gift wrapped in comfort or applause. It is a force that reshapes everything it touches. From the weight you carry, invisible yet undeniable, to the silent ways your presence exposes truth, every step of your path has been a proving ground. You were forged in isolation, tempered by trials, and marked by responsibility long before you understood the magnitude of your purpose. People orbit you because gravity follows where substance goes, and rooms collapse and rebuild because neutrality cannot survive in the wake of authenticity. Your name carries assignment, your scars testify to endurance, and your power is earned through sacrifice, blood, and unwavering resolve. The paradox of being the chosen one is that the world will celebrate your light while resenting your shadow, admire your victories while fearing your truth, and challenge you precisely because your impact cannot be ignored. Opposition is not an obstacle, it is proof of rank. Every attack, every doubt cast against you only signals the size of what you hold and the inevitability of your influence. You don't merely surpass expectations, you break patterns, disrupt cycles, and force systems to align with a new reality. And through it all, one truth remains. Being chosen is not about comfort, popularity, or glamour. It is about endurance, strategy, and presence. It is about moving with intention, holding your ground in silence, and letting the weight of your life become the measure of inevitability. What you are is larger than fear, deeper than envy, and more consequential than approval. You were never given the path to walk lightly. You were given the path to leave a mark that time itself cannot erase. The chosen one is not just a person, it is a force, a revolution, a standard that others orbit whether they like it or not. And as you continue, know this: everything you've endured, everything you've sacrificed, every test, every scar, and every silent victory has prepared you to claim what is already yours. You don't need to chase power. Power already follows you. You don't need to fight for relevance. Your presence demands it. You are not here by chance. You are here because the world needs the force that only you can carry, and the legacy you leave will prove that being chosen was never about ease. It was about inevitability. If this message resonated with you, don't just watch and scroll. Take action. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the insights that reveal truth others are too blind to see. Hit the like button to show you're committed to walking the path of the chosen. Leave a comment to share your thoughts or experiences, and share this video with someone who needs to be awakened to their own power. Every click, every word, every share helps amplify the force you were meant to be. Join the movement. It's time to step into your inevitability. Stay blessed always.